You notice the red before you notice the girl. Not bright red, not royal red. This is the deep, almost brown red of dried blood on old stone. A ribbon no wider than your finger, tied at the end of her braid. She stands 3 pews ahead of you, head bowed, candlelight trembling across the chapel walls like nervous ghosts. The priest drones in Latin about purity, obedience, flesh kept under lock and key. You try to focus, you really do. But the ribbon burns in your vision like a coal that refuses to die. Red is not decoration here. Red is a statement. Red is a warning. You already know this, even if nobody ever says it out loud. Outside, the winter air smells like smoke and animal fat. Inside, the church smells like damp wool, cold stone, and the sour breath of people afraid of their own bodies. The year is somewhere in the late 1400s, give or take a plague or two. You are in a small town that answers to a bishop who answers to Rome, which claims to answer to God. Everyone is watched. Especially women. Especially their bodies. Especially anything red. The girl shifts, just slightly. The ribbon moves against the pale wool of her cloak. A flicker of color in a world trained to fear it. You know what the sermons say. Red is the color of the whore of Babylon from Revelation, draped in scarlet and sin. Red is the devil's banner. Red is temptation made visible. Red is what happens when women forget their place, and men pretend they have no impulses. No pressure. The priest's voice sharpens. He speaks of Eve, of blood, of the monthly curse that proves women are closer to beasts than angels. You've heard this before. Everyone has. Menstruation is whispered about like a crime scene. It is used as proof of weakness, instability, danger. A bleeding body is an ungovernable body, and ungovernable bodies scare institutions built on control. The girl lifts her head for a moment. You catch her profile, young, maybe 16. Maybe already promised to a man twice her age with breath like old cheese and opinions about obedience. Her ribbon is the only bright thing in the room, and that is exactly the problem. Because red does not just mean blood. It means heat. It means desire. It means the kind of attention that gets women accused of inviting sin simply by existing in color. In a world where most clothing is mud, ash, and sheep, red is loud. Red is intentional. Red says, look at me, even if the girl wearing it just likes the way it makes her feel slightly less invisible. But visibility is dangerous currency. A woman seen is a woman judged. A woman noticed is a woman suspected. A woman wearing red is a woman one bad rumor away from being called a whore, a temptress, or if things really spiral, a witch. Fun fashion era. You try to drag your eyes back to the altar. The crucifix looms, ribs carved in sharp detail, a body broken for everyone's sins, blood painted carefully along the wood. That blood is holy, symbolic, controlled. Hers would not be. That is the quiet rule no one writes down. Sacred blood redeems. Female blood condemns. The mass ends. Benches scrape. Boots shuffle. The girl turns to leave, and for half a second, her eyes meet yours. There's defiance there. Or maybe you imagine it because you want someone in this town to have a pulse. Then an older woman grips the girl's wrist and hisses something in her ear. The girl's hand flies to the ribbon, as if she forgot she was wearing it, as if she just remembered the risk. You step outside into the gray morning, and the bell tolls overhead like a warning disguised as a prayer. Behind you, someone mutters, "Did you see that color in church?" And just like that, a ribbon becomes a rumor. Scarlet laws and holy fear. Here's what matters. Red is not just a color in medieval Europe. It is a category of suspicion. You walk through the market square, and everything looks like it was dyed in resignation. Browns, faded greens. The occasional sad blue if someone had money or connections. Bright dyes are expensive. Scarlet especially. True red cloth often comes from Kermes insects, crushed into powder, and sold at prices that could feed a family for months. So when someone wears red, It is never neutral. In 1363, England passes the Statutes of Apparel, sumptuary laws that dictate who can wear what based on rank. Colors are social boundaries you can put on your body. Scarlet is reserved for nobles, knights, and the people society actually wants to be seen. Everyone else is expected to dress like background scenery. Clothing becomes a moral document. Your sleeves confess your status. Your hemline testifies against you. Now add theology. Church writers for centuries have obsessed over female blood. Tertullian calls women the devil's gateway. Medieval medical theory claims menstruation is the body purging excess dangerous humors. A bleeding woman is considered spiritually and physically unstable. Some regions bar menstruating women from communion. Others claim crops will fail if a menstruating woman walks through the field. So red on a woman's body does not just suggest wealth or rebellion. It echoes the one kind of blood men cannot control that makes people nervous. Scripture does its part. Revelation describes the great harlot clothed in purple and scarlet, drunk on the blood of saints. Artists paint her in red for centuries. Red becomes the visual shorthand for sexual sin, spiritual corruption, and feminine danger, all rolled into one convenient pigment. Branding before marketing existed. Meanwhile, the church pushes ideals of virginity and modesty so hard you'd think fabric itself could sin. Women are told to dull themselves, to mute their presence, to be vessels, not signals. And then someone walks by in red. You see the tension instantly. Men look, then look away too fast. Women look, then whisper. Authority looks and starts mentally flipping through the rulebook. Because red suggests heat. Heat suggests desire. Desire suggests loss of control. And loss of control is the one thing hierarchical systems cannot tolerate. In some cities, prostitutes are legally required to wear identifying markers. Often not red, ironically, but yellow veils or specific stripes. Still, the public imagination does not care about technicalities. Scarlet woman becomes a phrase. Red becomes mental shorthand for sexual availability, whether invited or not. Which means a respectable woman wearing red is either dangerously bold or dangerously stupid, depending on who you ask. You pass a group of clerics debating near the well. One gestures sharply at a merchant's wife, whose dress has red stitching along the cuffs. Subtle, but not subtle enough that he does not accuse her of lust outright. That would be too honest. Instead, he questions her humility, her priorities, whether she seeks attention, whether attention leads men to sin. And if men sin, whose fault is that really? Spoiler, not the men. This is how control works. No need for chains when color itself becomes evidence. You realize something uncomfortable. Red forces a conversation about the body in a culture desperate to pretend bodies are just inconvenient soul containers. It drags desire into daylight. It reminds everyone that people are not stone statues with prayer schedules. So they demonize the color instead. Blame the dye, blame the cloth, blame the ribbon. Anything but the system that fears what it cannot fully police. Across the square, you spot that same girl from church. The ribbon is gone, but the mark she just earned in people's memories is not. And someone is already deciding what to call her next. He girl with the red thread. Her name is Anneliese Bauer, and history will not remember it kindly. You are in a small German territory in the early 1500s, where pamphlets about witches spread faster than actual facts. The printing press has entered the chat, and paranoia finally has a distribution network. Anneliese is 18. She works with dyed wool, helping her uncle who trades cloth between towns. She knows colors. She knows which plants stain, which insects crush into brilliance, which shades fade like promises. She also knows she looks good in red. Tragic, apparently. The first complaint is small. A neighbor claims Anneliese smiled at her husband in the street. The second is weirder. A cow miscarries after Anneliese delivers a bundle of dyed yarn to the farm. By the third, people are connecting dots that were never on the same page. Someone mentions she favors red thread. Someone else says she saw Annalise tying a red cord around her wrist during a festival. Protection charm, probably. Folk custom. The kind of quiet practice that predates the church and survives in whispers. But in 1486, a lovely little book called Malleus Maleficarum hits Europe and basically says, if something feels off and a woman is nearby, you've got yourself a witch. Academic standards were low. Red thread becomes red flag. You stand in the back of the town hall as Annalise is questioned. The room smells like sweat and wet wool. A cleric asks why she wears red so often. She says it is part of her trade. He asks if she knows red is the color of lust. She says it is also the color that sells best. Wrong answer. They ask about the charm on her wrist. She says her grandmother taught her to tie red thread to ward off illness. The cleric hears pagan superstition. The magistrate hears social disorder. The crowd hears confirmation of what they already decided. She is not tortured yet, not physically. First comes isolation, reputation peeled away layer by layer. Girls stop walking with her. Customers hesitate. Her uncle stops meeting her eyes. Red made her visible. Now visibility is a trap. You catch her glance across the room, not defiant this time. Not ashamed either, just tired. Like she knows logic has left the building and will not be returning. The accusation shifts, as it always does, toward sexuality. Did she lure men? Did she cause impure thoughts? Did livestock fail because God punishes communities that tolerate sinful women? You almost laugh at the mental gymnastics, but no one else finds this funny. They search her home and find bundles of dyed thread. Some of it red. Of course it is red. That is literally her job, evidence. A woman who works with color is now accused of manipulating unseen forces. A woman associated with red is linked to lust, blood, and the devil. Symbol stacks on symbol until a person disappears under the weight of metaphor. By the time formal charges are considered, the story has transformed. She did not just wear red. She used red to bewitch, to seduce, to corrupt. In a world terrified of female desire, the easiest explanation is always supernatural evil, not basic human existence. You leave the hall before the verdict. You cannot stand the way the crowd looks relieved. Like they found a container for their fear and labeled it with a girl's name. Outside, a scrap of red thread clings to the mud near the door. You almost pick it up. Almost. Whispers in crimson. Here is the part they do not record in court documents. People do not stop believing in old protections just because a bishop says so. They just get quieter about it. You sit in a low cottage at the edge of town, smoke from the hearth stinging your eyes. 3 women lean close together, knees touching, voices barely above breath. On the table lies a length of red thread. Not bright, not showy. The color of embers just before they fade. One woman is heavily pregnant. Another has lost 2 children to fever. The third is old enough to remember prayers that were not in Latin. They tie the thread gently around the pregnant woman's wrist, a charm for safe birth. A tradition older than the church tower that shadows their homes. They do not call it magic. They call it what their mothers did. But they also keep the door barred. Because red on the body in public is suspicion. Red in secret is survival. You realize something the authorities never quite grasp. Symbol control only works in daylight. In private, people keep their own systems, their own meanings. Red is not just lust or Satan or scandal, it is life. Blood that means birth, not just sin, warmth in winter. Protection against things medicine cannot yet name. The church paints red as threat. Women quietly use it as shield. Across Europe, similar threads exist. Red beads sewn inside hems. Red stitches hidden in collars. Small, defiant acts no sermon can fully erase. Cultural memory stitched into fabric where doctrine cannot easily reach. It is not open rebellion, no banners, no speeches. Just continuity. And that is what makes it powerful. Because while courts argue theology, and men write treatises about female weakness, Women pass down practices in kitchens, at wells, in the spaces history pretends are empty. Red survives not as spectacle, but as whisper. Still, the danger never disappears. If discovered, a thread becomes proof of witchcraft. A charm becomes a pact with darkness. Intent does not matter. Meaning is assigned from above, and the punishment comes from the same direction. You think about Annalise, about the girl in church with the ribbon, about how easily color turns into accusation when filtered through fear. The pregnant woman smiles faintly as the thread is tied. For a moment, hope outweighs risk. For a moment, red is not scandal. It is comfort. Then someone knocks at the door, not loud, not urgent, but no one in the room moves to answer, because in this world, a simple piece of colored string can be the difference between a blessing and a sentence. The sermon of Scarlet, you stand in the back of the church again, because that is where people like you always end up when things feel off. The priest today is not the usual soft-voiced relic who smells like mothballs and regret. This one is younger, sharper, eyes bright with the kind of conviction that has never met a doubt it couldn't burn. He holds up a strip of cloth, red. It looks harmless in his hand, lightweight, dyed wool, nothing fancy. But the way the congregation stiffens, you would think he is holding a snake by the tail. He begins with revelation. He always begins with revelation when he wants fear to do the heavy lifting. The woman clothed in scarlet, the mother of abominations, the color of corruption, he says. The devil's banner stitched into earthly vanity. You glance around. Half the women in the room are staring at their laps as if worried their aprons might suddenly blush and betray them. He pivots smoothly from scripture to society. Red on the body invites temptation. Red draws the male eye. Red encourages sinful thoughts that would otherwise remain dormant. Apparently like bears in winter. Wild, how men's self-control is treated. Like a weather condition, women are expected to forecast. He does not name anyone. He does not have to. Everyone knows about Annalise, about the ribbon girl, about the merchant's wife with the red stitching. Their reputations hover in the air like smoke. He says Satan does not always appear with horns. Sometimes he appears as beauty, as color, as a woman who forgets humility. Subtle. Then comes the part that matters. He urges fathers to watch their daughters, husbands to guide their wives, mothers to correct other women before authorities must step in. Surveillance disguised as care, control disguised as protection. You can feel the shift in the room. People are not just listening. They are deputizing themselves. He waves the cloth once more. This is how sin enters, he says. Not through gates, but through threads. You almost laugh at the drama, but then you remember Annalise sitting in that hall, and the sound dies in your throat. After the sermon, the spills into the yard, buzzing with moral purpose. Conversations start in low tones that rise with each retelling. Did you hear what Father said? I always thought that shade was a bit bold. Some girls these days, red is no longer just risky. It is officially framed as a community threat. That changes everything. Private suspicion becomes public duty. You notice a mother scolding her daughter, no older than 12, for a faded pink ribbon in her hair. Pink, the watered-down cousin of scandal. The girl looks confused. Yesterday it was just a color. Today it is a warning label. Policy shift achieved. Near the gate, two men talk about reporting unusual behavior tied to certain women. One mentions charms, another mentions clothing. Evidence standards remain impressively non-existent. You realize sermons like this are infrastructure. They build the mental roads accusations travel on later, and once those roads exist, someone is going to be dragged down them. Across the yard, you see the pregnant woman from the cottage. Her sleeve has slipped slightly, just enough to reveal the faintest line of red thread at her wrist. Her eyes meet yours, and you both know she heard every word. Blood, science, and other fairy tales. Here is where religion teams up with medieval science, and they both decide women are the problem. You sit in a dim room that smells of herbs, ink, and something sour underneath it all. A local healer flips through a worn manuscript filled with diagrams of bodies that look more symbolic than accurate. Arrows point to organs with notes about humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. Health is balance. Illness is excess. Guess which humor women supposedly have too much of? Blood. Menstruation, according to common medical belief across medieval Europe, is the body expelling dangerous surplus. If it does not leave, women are thought to become unstable, sick, even monstrous. Some texts claim menstrual blood can wilt crops, dull mirrors, or spoil wine. Yes, really. You watch as the healer explains to a worried husband that his wife's melancholy may be tied to her cycles. Her body is governed by the moon, he says. Tides, fluids, emotions. She is naturally more changeable, less rational, more porous, which is a poetic way to say men wrote the textbooks. Now layer color symbolism on top of that. Red is not just associated with sin. It is tied to this feared internal process. A woman wearing red is visually echoing the very thing culture says makes her dangerous and unpredictable. The logic is crooked, but it holds emotionally. And emotion runs policy more often than anyone admits. You think about how Christ's blood is worshipped, preserved in relics, painted in glowing reds on church walls. That blood saves. That blood is divine. Female blood, meanwhile, is treated like a contaminant that needs to be hidden, managed, apologized for. Same substance. Very different PR team. In some regions, menstrual women are discouraged from baking bread, touching holy objects, even sleeping beside their husbands. The fear is not just physical, it is spiritual leakage. Boundaries between sacred and profane blur when the body refuses to stay tidy. Red becomes shorthand for that boundary failure. You step outside and pass a group of boys throwing stones at a stray dog with a reddish coat. They call it devil-colored. You want to tell them it is just fur, but you already know symbols rarely listen to reason. At the well, two women gossip about another whose husband fell ill. She was seen wearing a red shawl last week, one says. The implication hangs there. Illness becomes moral narrative. Color becomes motive. You see the pattern now. Red links together menstruation, sexuality, temptation, and misfortune into one convenient visual package. It simplifies a chaotic world. Something goes wrong? Find the woman in red. Problem solved. Justice served. Anxiety temporarily soothed. Except it never stays solved, because the real fear is not dye or thread. It is the fact that bodies bleed, want, change, and refuse to behave like obedient stone statues. Red just makes that visible. And visibility, in a culture built on denial, feels like attack. As you turn the corner toward home, you notice a strip of red cloth nailed to a door, not decoration. A mark. Marked in scarlet, the cloth on the door is not festive. It is pinned there like evidence. You stand across the narrow lane, pretending to adjust your boot while your eyes track the house. The red scrap flutters in the wind, frayed at the edges, bright enough to pull every passing glance. No one touches it. No one needs to. The message is already doing its job. Inside lies Marta Keller, widow, midwife. The woman people run to when labor turns bad and priests start muttering about God's will instead of doing anything useful. She also knows herbs, knows bodies, knows that sometimes blood means life, not doom. That alone makes her suspicious. Add in the fact that she wears a red shawl when she works, supposedly so stains do not show, and now you have a walking sermon illustration. You watch neighbors pass. Some cross themselves. Others look quickly, then away. A few stare too long, like they are trying to spot horns through the walls. This is how accusation escalates. First whispers, then sermons, then symbols placed on doors so the whole town can participate in the story. Public labeling saves time. Why investigate when you can decorate? You hear two men talking near the corner. They say Marta was present at a birth where the baby died. They say she muttered something in a language no one recognized. They say she keeps red thread in her basket. They say a lot of things. Grief needs a target. Marta is convenient. Her knowledge sits outside church control. Her work deals directly with blood, pain, and the messy parts of life theology prefers to keep abstract. And she wears red dot. You finally cross the lane and knock before your common sense can stop you. The door opens just enough for one eye to appear. She recognizes you and lets you in fast. The room smells of rosemary, smoke, and iron. Bowls of dried plants line the shelves. Cloth bundles sit neatly stacked. A red shawl hangs over the back of a chair, darkened in places from years of use. Practical, not provocative. She laughs when you mention the cloth on her door, but there is no humor in it. They think if they mark me, God will do the rest, she says. You ask why she does not take the shawl off, at least in public. Her answer is simple. Because babies do not stop bleeding just because men get nervous about color. Fair point. She tells you about the birth. The child was breech. The mother too young. Marta tried everything she knew. The baby never breathed. Now the family needs a reason that does not involve biology, chance, or the limits of human skill. So they pick symbolism. She lifts a length of red thread from the table, rolling it between her fingers. This used to mean protection, she says. Now it means accusation. Outside, a stone hits the wall, not hard, a test throw. The beginning of courage that only appears in groups. You realize Marta is balanced on the edge of the same slope Annalise slipped down. Once red becomes proof, every action reinterprets itself. Healing becomes hexing. Knowledge becomes witchcraft. A shawl becomes a confession. You leave through the back door. Behind you, the red cloth on the front door snaps in the wind like a flag claiming conquered territory. Desire, painted and punished. You find red again where the church says it belongs. In art. Inside the cathedral of a nearby city, frescoes bloom across the walls in colors richer than anything peasants are allowed to wear. Saints glow in gold. Skies shimmer in blue, made from crushed lapis worth more than land. And everywhere, in careful strokes, there's red. Christ's wounds, martyr's blood. The robes of high-ranking figures. The flames of hell licking at the Dan. Here, red is controlled, framed. The meaning assigned by men with theological training and access to expensive pigments. You stand beneath a painting of Mary Magdalene. In this version, she wears a deep red cloak. Once labeled a repentant prostitute, she becomes a symbol of redeemed sexuality, desire tamed, passion redirected toward God. Even female sin gets a makeover when it serves doctrine. You almost admire the efficiency. In daily life, red on a woman signals danger. On a church wall, red tells a story the institution approves of. Same color, different power dynamics. A group of apprentices whisper nearby, sneaking glances at a panel showing the Last Judgment. Naked bodies twist in torment, devils prodding them toward fire. The devils are tinged with red. So are the flames. So are the faces of the damned, flushed with fear and heat. Red is sensation. Red is the body turned up to maximum. The church uses it to make emotion visible, then warns people not to feel too much of anything in real life. Emotional outsourcing. You overhear a cleric explaining to a patron that red draws the eye, stirs the soul, communicates urgency. He says it like a marketing strategy, which honestly it is. They understand the psychology perfectly. That is what makes the hypocrisy sting. Because outside these walls, a woman stirring the eye or the soul is a liability. Inside, the institution does it on purpose with pigment and calls it devotion. You think about Annalise, about Marta, about the ribbon girl. None of them painted themselves on cathedral walls. None of them claimed divine symbolism. They just existed in color, and that was enough. A bell rings, echoing through stone ribs overhead. The sound vibrates in your chest. You stare at a painted drop of Christ's blood, perfectly round, eternally suspended, sanctified red. You wonder what would happen if someone painted a menstruating woman with the same reverence, if birth blood got a halo, If female bodies were depicted as sacred instead of suspect, you almost laugh. That kind of shift would rewrite half the moral framework of the continent. Outside, the sky is turning the color of watered wine as evening falls. In the street below the cathedral steps, you spot a young woman quickly tucking a red kerchief into her basket when she notices a patrol of church officials. Art gets to be bold. People do not dot as you turn away. You realize something cold and clear. The church never hated red dot, it just hated who controlled its meaning. The night of quiet flames, you wake to the smell of smoke, and for one hopeful second, you think someone is baking bread early. Then you hear shouting, not panicked, not surprised, organized. You step into the street and see the glow at the far end of town. Orange light licking the dark like a tongue tasting blood. People are already gathering, pulling on cloaks, pretending they were just passing by at this exact tragic moment. Marta's house is burning. The red cloth that marked her door is gone, swallowed in flame along with everything else. Sparks rise into the night sky, brief stars that vanish before they mean anything. Buckets move in slow, half-hearted lines. Enough effort to say they tried, not enough to actually save the place. You hear someone say it was an accident, a tipped candle, careless woman. You hear someone else say God's judgment works in mysterious but conveniently flammable ways. You do not see Marta. A boy near you whispers that she ran when the fire started. Another says she was seen on the road at dusk. No one sounds certain. Uncertainty is useful. It keeps guilt diffuse. The pregnant woman from the cottage stands stiff beside you, one hand clamped over her wrist where the red thread hides beneath her sleeve. Her lips move in silent prayer, though you doubt she's asking the church for anything tonight. The roof caves in with a roar, sending a rush of sparks into the sky. The crowd flinches, then leans in closer. Fire is terrifying. Fire is mesmerizing. Fire is also very good at erasing evidence and moral responsibility. You notice how people watch with the same intensity they use for festivals. Communal emotion binds faster when there is heat involved. A man near the front mutters that at least the town will be safer now. From what exactly, he does not specify. From complicated women? Probably. You think about Marta's red shawl, about the threat in the cottage, about Annalise waiting in a cell somewhere while officials debate how much pain equals truth. Red was framed as danger. Now orange flames do the work openly, and everyone calls it cleansing. Funny how destruction gets holy rebranding when it targets the right people. The fire dies down to a bed of glowing coals. Embers pulse in the wreckage, deep red fading slowly to black. The same color as that ribbon in church, the same shade as dried blood, the same tone artists use for martyrdom. You wonder who decides which red means sacrifice and which means sin. As the crowd disperses, you catch fragments of conversation. Maybe she fled to join others like her. Maybe she really was in league with dark forces. Maybe we should check on that other girl who always wore bright colors. Rumor does not burn. It spreads. You head home under a sky still streaked with smoke. The air tastes bitter. Your clothes carry the scent of char, and you know it will cling for days. Before you close your door, you notice something on your own threshold. A single strand of red thread, laid there carefully. Not accusation, not decoration, a message. What the color remembers. You hold the thread between your fingers, and it feels like nothing. Soft, ordinary, harmless. Which is exactly why it terrified them. Weeks pass. Officially, Marta died in an unfortunate accident. Unofficially, people avoid saying her name out loud, like it might summon consequences. Annelise's trial drags on, testimony bending to match fear. The girl from church now dresses in browns and grays, her brightness filed down to something socially acceptable. The town looks calmer. Control often does, but beneath sleeves and inside hems, red survives. You start noticing it everywhere once you know how to look. A stitch in a collar, a thread woven through a bracelet, a scrap tied to a cradle leg. Not bold. Not visible unless you are close enough to matter. Meaning went underground. The church keeps preaching about modesty, obedience, the dangers of feminine influence. Authorities keep warning about hidden sin, secret practices, the devil working through the weak. They are not entirely wrong about one thing. There is a network, not of witches flying through the night, but of memory. Of women passing down knowledge in kitchens and birthing rooms. Of color carrying stories older than the latest sermon series. Red is no longer just lust or Satan or scandal. It is code. It is solidarity. It is a reminder that bodies are not inherently evil just because they bleed, desire, or create life. You sit by the fire one evening as the pregnant woman from the cottage rocks her newborn son. A thin red thread circles the baby's wrist. Protection, she whispers when she catches you looking. From illness? From fear, she says. Outside, the world still runs on suspicion. Laws still regulate clothing. Clergy still warn that female beauty leads men astray, as if men are livestock spooked by bright fabric. Some things never change, but here is the shift. Red no longer belongs entirely to the system that tried to weaponize it. Meaning has split. Official red, painted on saints and devils. Unofficial red, worn in secret as defiance, comfort, continuity. Symbols are battlegrounds. Whoever defines them shapes reality. You think about future centuries. About how red will one day mean romance, passion, celebration. How people will give red roses without fearing arrest. How the color once linked to Satan and menstrual panic will headline weddings and holidays. Meanings change, fear mutates. Control finds new costumes. But the pattern stays familiar. Somewhere, in some era, someone will still decide a woman's clothing says more about morality than her actions. Someone will still confuse visibility with guilt. Someone will still try to turn color into crime. You look at the thread in your hand, blowing softly in fireht. It survived sermons, laws, fires, trials. The question is not why red scared them. The question is what else we have been taught to fear, simply because it reminds us we have bodies. The color that never confessed. You walk away from the village, but the color follows. Not loud, not blazing, just flashes. A berry crushed underfoot. A smear of sunset caught in river water. A thread peeking from a sleeve when someone forgets to be afraid for half a second. History tried to put red on trial. It called it lust. Called it Satan. Called it proof that women were closer to sin than salvation. It built sermons around it. Laws around it. Fires around it. But the color never confessed. Because red was never the crime. Red was just honest about something the system could not control. Bodies bleed. Bodies want. Bodies bring life through pain and risk and mess. No decree, no prayer, no threat of punishment ever changed that. So power did what power always does when reality will not cooperate. It rebranded reality as danger. You have seen how it works. A ribbon becomes a rumor. A shawl becomes suspicion. A thread becomes evidence. Meaning gets twisted until fear feels like virtue. And still, people kept tying red around wrists in dark kitchens. Kept stitching it into hems where no priest could see. Kept passing it from mother to daughter like a quiet inheritance of courage. That is the part the records rarely capture. Not just persecution, but persistence. Red survived because people needed what it represented more than they feared. The consequences, protection, vitality, desire. The stubborn truth that living in a body is not a moral failure. Centuries later, the color will soften in public memory. It will sell chocolates, mark holidays, fill hearts on cards. Most people will forget there was a time when wearing red could turn neighbors into witnesses and whispers into verdicts. But the mechanism never really disappears. Society still police bodies, still blame visibility, still turn symbols into weapons when control feels threatened. The shades change. The language updates. The pattern stays eerily familiar. So when you see red now, anywhere, remember it has a past heavier than velvet and brighter than paint. It has been feared, forbidden, fetishized, and fought over. And through all of it, it kept meaning more than the people in charge wanted it to. Which leaves you with one uncomfortable, lingering thought. If a simple color could be turned into evidence of sin, what else have we quietly agreed to fear? Without ever asking who taught us to be